Hey, good morning. So today, for today's mini lecture, we're going to talk a little bit about Porter and the five forces. So modules in this module, this week's module and the following week's module, you're going to be learning and then applying Porter's five forces to your external analysis for your firm. But Porter is it is a really complex topic. The researcher that developed Porter's five forces, Michael Porter out of Harvard, has written articles and books on it, and the best the textbook can do, given just the nature of textbooks, is try to condense it into 2 or 3 pages. So I wanted to spend some time talking about Porter a bit, and really start off by saying that if you're in an organization where you're going to do some external analysis using Porter's five forces, you usually go out to an outside consultant that does it. It's a specialization that typically can take a month, 2, 3 months to do, depending on how big your firm is. Our purpose here is really just to expose you to it, to kind of give you a sense of how to do some analysis for your own firm. Even if you don't go through the full Porter's five forces, it's still useful to explain a concept. Before Porter published this work, there wasn't really a tool for corporate managers to go out and do some analysis of how their company fit into the bigger picture. You had SWOT analysis, and you had some top level macroeconomic tools, but there's nothing really for someone to look at their industry. And that's what the five forces does. So it really looks at 2 things. It looks at, on this axis, right, and this is from the textbook, right? So I kind of took from the textbook and just put it on my whiteboard here. So this axis asks the question, essentially, who is earning the most profits from this transaction, right, from the entire sales process. And then this axis asks the question, how competitive is this market going to be going forward? In the middle is just, you're looking at your current competitors, right? So Porter's five forces, one of the weaknesses to Porter's five forces, and it talks about it in the textbook, is that it really only looks at a snapshot in time. So inside the blue box you see here is really Porter's five forces is asking, today at this time, what does the competitive environment look like? It doesn't really have a tool or a method for you to ask the question, what impacts this, today's competitive environment? That's what's here in the red font. And then the textbook discusses this. So I'm going to give you an example. You use milk, right? So that's something that's been a topic of conversation in the business press lately, is just the price of milk. So if we look at milk, and we're using Porter's five forces on this axis here, right? We're asking the question of everyone in this value chain. You have the dairy, you have the milk producers here, right? The people that own the cows. You have the dairy that actually takes the milk from the cows and makes it into milk, right? And then if we're doing a competitive analysis, if we were Walmart, we would look in here, you'd have Walmart, Target, all the mom and pop shops, think all the places you buy milk. And then here you have us, the consumers. So in this entire chain of cash flow, right, from here to here, you have cash exchanging hands. The question is, who is able to determine the amount of profit they're going to hold on to, right? You can think of it as the ability to determine the price of the product they're going to pay for. So the farmer the rancher that owns the cows is going to try to sell his product, his raw milk, to the dairy for as much money as he possibly can. And the dairy is going to try to sell their milk to the retailer for as much as they can, and then they're going to try to sell the milk for as much profit to us as they can. Right? So the question is, who controls that? Who has the ability to dictate the price? So the question is, so if we did, right, as consumers, can we go to Walmart or can we go to Target on Monday morning and go out to these 5 stores, or let's say 5 stores, and say, I'm going to buy a gallon of milk today. Give me 5 prices, give me 5 bids. Right? We can't do that. We don't have really any pricing power, any purchasing power. We go to the store and we have to buy it for what's on the price tag. So you go back into the chain, you say, okay, does Walmart have any ability to determine what they will charge for it? Or do they have the ability to determine what they'll pay the dairy for? And we know if you do some research, you'll find that particularly Walmart, but the retailers have a great deal of power in determining what price they will pay for the dairy and for the ranch, what they'll pay for the gallon of milk. In fact, we know their pricing power is so significant that they're really causing some disruptions on this end of the process, because the ranchers find sometimes it simply isn't worth it to have a certain number of cows alive, because they can't make enough margin. In fact, I just read recently that Walmart is opening its own dairy in the southeast somewhere, maybe Arkansas, Alabama, I don't recall where. So they're even going to pick up more of this supply, more of this chain, right? So if you're Walmart, not only in the supplier side you have the cattle rancher, but you also have the dairy that produces the milk. So in this case, Walmart is going to be able to pick up even more of this profit chain, because they're opening up their own dairy operation. If you work in this direction, kind of the question is, just for milk, is it easy for people to enter the kind of, let's say, the retail space? So if you and I said, we'd really like to open the retail space to sell milk, we would have to come up with, physical locations, supply chain relationships, develop customers, so there is some barriers to entry, right? Now, if we had already owned, let's say, if we already owned a convenience store, let's say a gas station, and we were remote, we're in rural America, we could probably get into the milk market. We wouldn't be really competitive, but we could do it. But there's a lot of resistance, right? It's really hard to get in that market because of the infrastructure required. And then you have substitutes. Are there things that can be substituted for milk? So in this case, we're thinking Walmart, but if we think about milk, you've got almond milk, soy milk, right? Think of all the different types of milk. You have different substitutes you could have a different substitute for a retail location. That's something that you would have to kind of determine. Right here, I'm trying to think about, there may not be many substitutes for retail milk. Milk, right? The milkman's kind of gone the way of the dinosaur. So there's probably not a lot of substitutes for the retailer for milk, although there may be substitutes for milk. So then the question is, so you've done your analysis and you've said, well, today, right, the competitive market characteristics for milk are within this box. But then you have to ask the question, well, what if something changes? What could change that might impact that? So a good example is, you have social forces, right? You have, this kind of in the consumer forces segment, where people they're shifting away from dairy and they're going to places like soy milk and almond milk. So you'd have to kind of look at all these different forces and understand, and kind of wrap your arms around what could change Porter's Five Forces. And I would argue as a manager, particularly as a senior manager, this is a big responsibility you have. You have a number of employees, in some cases you have shareholders, you have investment, and if you're a kind of an inattentive manager and you're only working inside the blue box and you're not paying attention to the different items in these red fonts, that's from the textbook, I would say you're being a pretty lousy manager. Right? You really need to understand, the economic. What are the economic drivers of purchasing milk? Is it price? If milk gets to $5 a gallon, do people stop buying it? Demographics is one of them, right? Over here we have demographics. As demographics change, are people less or more likely to drink milk? Global forces don't really have anything in milk, but you think about a lot of the corn out of Iowa, soy, particularly soybeans. When we're in a spat with China on some trade policy, they'll curtail how much product they buy from us. Soybeans they buy from us, simply because there's a fight in some other market, and they'll just say, well, we'll just go get our soybeans from Brazil. So when you're doing so in this first module, in this week's module, we're We're just trying to expose you to Porter's five forces conceptually. In the next module, you'll actually apply it, and there's some math, some basic math you can do, and there's a spreadsheet that you can use to plug in just conceptual values. And that's all really this next module is about. There's not really a right or wrong answer as much as I'm just looking for train of thought. There's no way you could do, for example, Porter's five forces on Boeing, or I'm sorry, an Airbus in a week. There are people that specializes in this. If this was a master's degree in strategy, this is something, Porter's five forces would be something you would become an expert on. In the MBA program, we're just introducing it to you so you understand it's a tool that's out there for you to use, either just conceptually to wrap your head around just the basic dynamics of your market, or if you really wanted to do a Porter's five forces, you'd have a sense that you'd have to go find someone that knows how to do it well. That's really it for this short mini lecture. If you have any questions, reach out. Otherwise, we will talk again later.